Thank you, Terry. It's an honor to be part of this assembly today. I'd like to give you a progress report on what we're doing at the National Science Foundation to move implementation of the Galway Statement along. First of all, the U.S. National Science Foundation is a small agency that I like to think has a big impact, not only on science in the world, but on promoting the good of society in general in the world. The National Science Foundation is about discovery. Knowledge for the sake of knowledge. It's my job and the job of my colleagues at the National Science Foundation to listen to what our colleagues on the front lines of science in the academic world are saying about what we don't know and what we need to know, and working with them to make it possible for them to pursue their ideas. That's the community that I started in as a university professor, and now I've come to NSF to provide the kind of governmental services that my predecessor did for me when I was a university professor. So our role is to trust our scientists to recognize and articulate high priority scientific issues, and then help them realize solutions for those issues. Before I talk about what NSF wants to do to move Galway progress along, I'd like to point out that the United States and our European partners have a long history of working together, and this partnership is driven primarily by our scientists working with one another and then approaching their respective governments for resources to make things go. That's going to primarily drive the future of science in the wake of the Galway Statement, I believe, and far beyond. I have just two examples here that are very much pertinent to research in the Atlantic. First of all, ongoing research now driven by Canada, China, which, as you may know, is not part of the Atlantic neighborhood, but is very interested in this thing. France, Germany, Netherlands, UK, and US on the so-called OSNAP project, which is part of the study of, which is the umbrella organization studying the Atlantic meridional overturn circulation. That is the transport of warm water from the central Atlantic to the north, cooling off, sinking, and creating the, if you will, a conveyor belt for ocean circulation and for the moderation of climate, the thermostating of great portions of the earth, Ireland in particular, as someone mentioned earlier today. But it's also associated with the driving of 25% of the carbon dioxide drawdown and a great deal, at the same time, of the biological production of the ocean. Also, the International Geotraces Project. This is a latter-day version of something back from the 1970s called GeoSex, which was the first attempt to map the chemical geography of the ocean, from which we got a large number of other international ocean projects. GeoTraces is going after the biologically active elements. This is a 22-nation effort, and we just finished, just a little more than 3 years ago, a study of the Atlantic from pole to pole. And let's see, in the Atlantic Geotraces, there were sections from Canada, France, Germany, Netherlands, Spain, UK, and the US. If you've ever worked with ocean trace metal people, you know you're dealing with very, very high-strung people. And 15 years ago, it would be inconceivable to have more than 3 of them in the same room together, even a room of this size. Well, they've learned to live together now, not just in working on understanding trace metals in the Atlantic, but around the entire world. I would never have thought that would happen in my lifetime. Now, both of these projects cover the entire Atlantic basin, the north and the southern basin. NSF actually got into the present conversation before Galway, because since the end of the joint global ocean flux study, the carbon dioxide study from the late 80s and 90s, our scientific community has wanted to go back to the North Atlantic to study the North Atlantic again, to get it right. That was the first place we went at the end of the 80s and early 90s. It was a dress rehearsal for understanding how the ocean and the Earth's atmosphere communicate carbon dioxide. We learned a lot of things, we made some errors. But as it turns out, there was a lot of political pressure, certainly in the United States, to terminate the JGOFS program. In my opinion, it was terminated early. The scientific community never forgot that. And they've been looking for an opportunity to go back. Well, we've got AMOC, we've got geotraces, and geotraces is going on to the Arctic, and Galway has helped set the stage for us to proceed. With that in mind, the National Science Foundation Director for Geosciences has just published, that is in December 2014, its plan for pursuing priority items in big Earth science between now and 2020. In one major section of the document, there's this statement: interagency and intergovernmental partnerships are forming that will enhance research opportunities in the Arctic and North Atlantic, as well as in the Southern Ocean. One example is transatlantic cooperation of NSF, NASA programs with Europe's Horizon 2020 framework, studies of the Arctic, subarctic, and North Atlantic. That's a statement from the NSF Advisory Committee for Geosciences, December 2014. Why the North Atlantic? First of all, because of we need to understand the meridional heat distribution system in the North Atlantic. The Atlantic Ocean is the Champs-Élysées for communication of heat, material, and a lot of other things from pole to pole. It's the only part of the ocean where that happens. In the North Atlantic part of the Champs-Élysées, we have major carbon dioxide drawdown, the basis that goes along with that for a huge part of ocean fisheries, for climate change, by which I mean CO2 sequestration, biological productivity. Now that statement from our Directorate of Geosciences at NSF actually came in wake of the conference that was held in Arlington, sponsored by the European Commission and National Science Foundation, the planning workshop for transatlantic, North Atlantic Arctic science cooperation. That workshop was held 1 year ago today, so this is the anniversary, if you will. And we were able to come to some understanding about common interest between the US, Canada, and European Union in the North Atlantic system. I won't go into what they were, because what I would really like to talk about is, you can read them if you like, but what NSF wants to do about it now. Our intention for launching a new U.S., Canada, EU scientific cooperation opportunity is to issue what we call a Dear Colleague letter this spring. A Dear Colleague letter is an action plan for advancing something under the normal way of operation of NSF. The way NSF works is in the Division of Ocean Sciences, twice a year, U.S. investigators submit proposals of their choosing, in our case, ocean science proposals. We do not tell them what to submit. The scientists tell us, we evaluate them through the peer review process. This Dear Colleague letter will acknowledge community interest in the North Atlantic Arctic research, will invite submission of proposals to one of our regular panel submission times. They can be for formal or informal collaboration with non-U.S. colleagues, encouraged but not required. There are no special funds set aside for this. No special funds. I want to emphasize that. That means that proposals that are awarded will be competing with all other proposals that come to NSF to assure that the things that we fund, the science that we fund, North Atlantic or otherwise, will be the very best science that comes along. So the North Atlantic science that is funded will be among the best possible for the year. That is what we intend to do. Also, we'll ask potential investigators to contact program officers ahead of time to discuss their plans. So to make sure that everyone understands that we're looking for really good stuff. And also to give them some advice on how to co-plan, how to collaborate with colleagues on the other side of the Atlantic or on the other side of the U.S.-Canadian border. Okay, we have some things in front of us. We have opportunities for partnerships. We want to pursue them with our colleagues in Canada and with the EU. We want to look for new things in the ocean to conduct research on. For example, the ocean and human health. Why things happen in the ocean, people get sick. Other things happen in the ocean and they create new medicines to make people well. We are looking forward to the opportunity to unite basic science, like that's funded by National Science Foundation, with applied science that's funded by many other agencies on both sides of the Atlantic. And finally, we want to say that the North Atlantic is just a first step, that we're expecting down the road that we're going to be looking further south because there's only one ocean, there's only one Atlantic, there's only one world. I'm going to turn this over to my colleague.